Hey, welcome back to Revenue Optimization Radio. It's the one show that takes a look at, well, how to optimize your revenue. Hosted by Patrick Morrissey, CMO of Altify. Revenue Optimization Radio is brought to you by those good folks. So why hold back? Let's have them tell you more right now. Welcome, Patrick.
Hey, Paul. How are you?
Okay. Is today the day we're premiering a new commercial, or did we run that before? I don't know. I just heard it for the first time. I really paid attention. It's a good spot today.
We're premiering the new one today, so that's amongst the many great things you can expect if you happen to be tuning in and listening.
Just a little teaser of what's coming here, yeah.
Exactly. I'll give you another teaser about what's coming. We're going to talk about how to improve your revenue, and it starts with hiring, developing, and really letting loose the women that work in your organization.
Wow, that sounds dangerous to an old geezer like me, letting women loose in the workplace.
Yes, and do what they tell you to do, and if you pay attention, good revenue results follow. There's a lot of research to back that up, but I'm excited to welcome Melissa Church, the Executive Director from the UnitedHealth Group. Melissa, welcome.
Hi, Patrick. How are you today?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks so much for joining us. The topic we're going to get into today is really centered on how do you build the next generation of women in revenue leadership. And I'm excited to get your point of view because you are a very accomplished leader in revenue and ops and growth and the hard work of actually building and developing companies, which gets into building and developing people. You are a fierce advocate for women in leadership, and you're a good coach and a better human. So give us a little bit of background as we get into this on just you and your background and what you do at UnitedHealth Group.
Sure, and thanks again for the invite. So I do work for UnitedHealth Group, and we are one of the largest health services companies in the world and made up of 3 distinct business units, Optum, OptumRx, and UnitedHealthcare. I currently work in the UnitedHealthcare business as the Executive Director for our North Carolina Dual Special Needs Plan, and I'm the business owner, which means I'm responsible for profit and loss, for growth, and for operational and quality performance. However, before that, I was the Vice President of Sales Operations in both our Optum business and in our community and state business in UnitedHealthcare. And I've got more than 20 years of experience working in growth operations of one kind or another, supporting that sales org and helping it grow.
Yes, so you have seen the film up close. You know what good looks like in revenue operations end to end. And I wanted to use that background as really kicking off the conversation from maybe elevating or taking a step out of the functional revenue role for a second. And give me your personal point of view on leadership and what makes a great leader.
Yeah, so, I think we could almost spend our whole time together on this topic. I've been in leadership roles for almost 20 years with teams varying from over 100 people to teams of just a few folks. For me as a leader, my most important job is to lift up the people who work for me, to help them discover their strengths and then give them the opportunity to shine. I also think it's incumbent on a leader to cast a strong, positive leadership shadow. Now, do you know what a leadership shadow is, Patrick?
I don't know that I do, but I'm very interested to find out. Talk to me about that.
Sure. So there's a saying, what you permit is what you promote. And when you're a leader in an organization, and honestly, just out there in daily life, there are people watching you, and they're taking their cues from you. And then they're kind of modeling back the same behavior either you're exhibiting or that you're allowing the people around you to exhibit. So if you're allowing bad or disruptive or even dishonest behavior around you, you're kind of giving that tacit approval. So it's incumbent truly upon leaders to make sure that they're behaving at the highest standard and that they're holding the folks around them to the highest standard also.
Yeah, so that's interesting on a couple different levels, and I want to specifically think about that in this case, more specifically related to gender, because one of the things that's been interesting to me as I've done the podcast is I've talked to a progressive number of revenue leaders who have talked about focusing more on women, hiring more women, and that the women, frankly, outperform the men. in all levels of the organization, particularly where revenue is involved. And I'm curious what you think about that. And one, would you agree? Is that consistent with your observation? And why might that be?
To be fair, I've worked with great revenue leaders of all genders, all backgrounds, but part of me wants to say that it's less about women suddenly outperforming men in a sales arena and more about women being really given the opportunity to succeed and being recognized for the value they bring to the role. So if I think back to when I was young, there were a lot of women that stayed home. They stayed home to raise their children, to run their household. Well, looking back, I was really fortunate to have both a grandmother that worked her entire life and a mother who started out essentially as an office assistant and worked her way up to branch manager in the banking business. Women today, there are so many role models out there for them, not so much when I was younger. So many leaders now are investing in growing the diversity of their teams, and it's no longer the woman behind the man or whatever that silly old saying was. It's the commitment to growing talent in sales organizations, and more often than not, that talent is female. I think we can all agree that the moment that you open your eyes up and you step out of what would be a traditional gender-identified role and start looking at more diverse candidates, you're really bringing a whole different level of talent to your organization.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And that's interesting when you think about organizational dynamics and you think about being intentional about diversity and about inclusion, and as well as about how do you grow and the responsibility from where you started about, hey, it's a leader's responsibility to help everybody grow. But then you shift that to revenue functions, and more often than not, when you get to the very top of the food pyramid, most of the executive roles are held by men. And I think what that raises to me is a question of, as a woman and as a leader, or as somebody who aspires to be a leader who might be younger in her career, how do I think about that in terms of really understanding my value and my worth and owning my own power?
Yeah, so I'm going to tell two quick stories about women I encountered while doing some internal work at UnitedHealth Group. I'm a culture facilitator for UnitedHealth Group, and what that means is I get to go around and do culture workshops with our younger leaders to help them understand how to kind of embrace our United culture and use it in their everyday decision-making to make better, stronger decisions, to drive performance, and to drive an environment that we're all happy working in. So the first was about Rachel. So Rachel approached me after we just finished our behavioral styles module. And then in that module, we identify everybody's kind of home style. So she came up to me and she said, Melissa, I'm a controlling style just like you. And Patrick, you know me. I'm sure you're not surprised that I'm a controlling style. So what she said was, I've been told my whole life that I'm too bold, that I need to step into the background because I was a woman. And first, it broke my heart. Like, I'm looking at this strong, clearly intelligent young leader, and she's been told, back off.
Yes.
So the first thing I did was say, absolutely not. Do not fade into the background. That is the worst thing you can do. I want you to give yourself permission to be yourself. An intelligent, strong female leader that is not afraid to stand up and speak her mind is just as valuable as somebody that sits back and is super contemplative and takes a little bit longer to make a decision. We have to value those differences in everybody.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I felt really good about that interaction with her and was able to catch up with her, probably 6-7 months later. And it was such a great change in her confidence. And she was starting to look for a new role within the company because she finally felt like she understood who she was and she knew what she wanted to do going forward to put herself into a role where she could really be herself. So the second young lady that I interacted with, completely different story. Ashley was a young IT leader, very laid back, had a very alternative look, had several tattoos, And she came to me at lunch and said, Melissa, I'm just super uncomfortable sometimes. I feel like I need to hide who I am or change how I look in order to fit in. So completely different situation, right? This, my first young lady, it was all about what was inside. And my second young lady, it was all about what was outside.
Right.
So this is a problem that we face sometimes as women, that we feel like we have to conform to whatever the norm is. So what I did was I reached out to a friend of mine who's a C-level executive, and they have a full sleeve of tattoos, and I don't know that I've ever seen them in a suit. And I asked them to send me a picture that I could share with Ashley. The next morning, I pulled her aside and said, hey, I want to show you something. This is a friend of mine. They're a chief marketing officer at a company, and this is what they look like. And her face lit up.
That's fantastic.
So, yeah. So she also told me, she said, well, I have a meeting after this culture session to go talk to one of the executives about a project that I'm working on. And my boss told me I needed to bring a suit and change clothes. And I said, well, who is it that you're talking to? And she told me, and I said, oh, no. That executive is a culture facilitator. He knows that the dress code for culture sessions is jeans. We don't dress formal for these workshops. Go in your jeans and start out by talking to him about your experience in the culture workshop. So a few days later, she called me back, and she was so excited. She felt like she was able to express herself, and by starting out with culture, she really built rapport with this executive and was able to have a really collaborative conversation about the project that they were working on.
That's interesting. Both those stories are interesting to me for different reasons that are all related, because it's not about some overarching or esoteric leadership philosophy. It is a little bit more about being yourself on purpose and giving yourself permission to own the space you walk in and be who you are on purpose.
Yeah. So in so many ways, the work world shifted, right? But in so many ways, we're still fighting some of those battles that our predecessors fought. So when I look at UnitedHealth Group, we have such a strong focus on our corporate culture, obviously, and how it's not just about diversity, but it's also about how inclusion makes us stronger. And we at UHG have taken that diversity kind of out of the box of gender and or race, and we broadened it to be what it really is, which is the beauty of what makes us different in any and all ways. And to be clear, inclusion is that critical piece. You can have a super diverse team in all ways, but if you're not creating space for them to feel comfortable and to contribute, you're losing out on the value of that diversity. And I was thinking just a little while ago, and I believe it was Valerie Jarrett, who was part of President Obama's kind of staff once he got into the White House. And she told a story about how he was so intentional about building a diverse team that included numerous women, and how frustrated she was after the first several months because they never created any space for the women to actually have a voice in the meetings. So, think of it this way. It's great to invite everybody to the party. It's great to go out and hire diverse candidates, to target women and hire more women into your organization. It's, invite them all to the party, but you also have to make sure everyone feels comfortable dancing. It's
correct, as well as, and that starts with, inviting everybody to the table, and then also, getting some understanding of who they are and what they bring and how that aligns to the shared values of the organization and where you're trying to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that raises a question for me, and it's specific to your comment about UnitedHealth Group and culture. Is what are some of the factors that play into company culture that allow that space for people to bring their best selves and their full selves to work, and that you enable in broad strokes everybody to succeed, regardless of the background or the role or gender or any other kind of label you want to put on this?
It's a challenging question because company culture is something that develops whether you're intentional about it or not.
Right.
There are a lot of examples out there like Uber where the company culture kind of grew up or grew, and suddenly they had a real problem on their hands. So, it's the intentionality and knowing that at the end of the day, what's the behavior that you want people to exhibit, and putting practices and protocols in place that make that the norm, that make it the standard. So things like understanding diversity at a deeper level, and that it is everything from where you were raised, how you were raised, your experiences from childhood all the way up through the day you walk in the door at a company, understanding that you're not going to agree with everybody, and it's important to understand what your filters are, what your kind of those natural reflexes that you have are, and being self-aware of them enough to know that in order to change your results, you have to change your thinking, which will in turn change your behaviors.
You know what? That is a great point, and I want to pick that up in just a second.
Sure.
Let's pause a minute to pay the bills, Melissa, and then we'll be right back and pick up that thought.
We live in a subscription economy. You're only as successful as your customers, and that requires a mindset shift from what's our strategy for the customer to what's our customer's strategy and how can we help. Focusing on your customers' needs and providing value in every interaction is critical to building long-term relationships and sustained sales success. The challenge for most sales leaders and their teams is their sales process doesn't match how customers buy in today's digital world. Sustained growth and sales execution are impossible because the revenue team isn't aligned with consistent process and methodology to understand their customers' people and their problems. Altify's customer revenue optimization solutions activates the entire revenue team with a combination of strategy, methodology, and applications to help companies deliver more value to their customers. The result is increased sales velocity, improved win rates, and increased customer satisfaction. With a CRO strategy, now you can effectively collaborate across the entire revenue team to win new business and unlock more cross-sell and upsell opportunities. Built natively on the Salesforce platform, Altify helps revenue leaders and their teams achieve sustained revenue growth and sales success. Visit Altify.com today to see how they help accelerate sales performance for some of the world's best sales teams, including Autodesk, Comcast, GE, Honeywell, Salesforce, Tableau, and UnitedHealth Group.
And with that, we hand it back to Patrick and his discussion of women in business today.
Thanks, Paul. We're talking today with Melissa Church, Executive Director at the UnitedHealth Group. And when we paused there for a second, Melissa, you had, if I caught you right, said, hey, to affect a change, and to get a change in results means you need to change thinking and you need to change behaviors. If you can change the thinking and change the mindset, then you can start to change the behaviors, and that gets you to the right kind of outcomes. So when you think about diversity or inclusion broadly, or specifically when you think about this in your role in executive leadership, where you're looking to recruit, retain, and grow women as part of that talent mix in sales and revenue ops more broadly, what's important and what's top of mind in terms of what should organizations be thinking about to enable the organization, the behavior, that mindset shift that really bakes into the culture and makes it someplace that as a high-performing woman, I want to come to work and I want to stay for a long time?
Yeah, three specific things and one general comment. The first comment, general, is think about the face that you're presenting to your candidates. One piece of advice I give anyone I'm coaching, women or men, honestly, is take a look at the leadership team of the company you're looking at interviewing with. Take a look at the C-suite. Look at the employees. Do you see diversity? Do you see women and people of color in leadership roles? Who a company chooses as their leaders will tell you so much about what the company is about. Now, as a company, here are the things that you can do. Number one, be intentional about recruiting and interviewing. Select a diverse pool of candidates to start with and a diverse pool of interviewers. be aware that as a leader, your first tendency may be to hire someone that looks and acts just like you. That's natural for everybody. Don't do it. Have other people interview, know what you're looking for, and be clear about that. Provide opportunities, number 2, provide opportunities to do more special projects, executive exposure. Push the women on your team out of their comfort zone in a good way. We as women, and my gender friends will probably yell at me for this, but we as women tend to play it safe. We don't always step outside of our box easily, and that limits our growth. So as a leader, push your female employees, push your female leaders to get out of their box. And then finally, number 3, have a career path, preferably several. Show women how they can move through the sales organization or move from sales to other parts of the organization. When I'm coaching, I remind people that no one cares more about your career than you do, but if you can find a leader that's willing to invest in you and help you grow, you've hit the jackpot.
That's such great advice, and I think that kind of points back to that's some probably hard-won experience that becomes part of the tools in your toolkit to help you lead and coach. When you think back on your career and lessons learned, what advice would you give to your younger self that would help you move through these curves and these learning experiences more quickly?
Wow, I had so many interesting experiences starting out in sales support in my 20s. In the software industry, heavily male-dominated, when I would be in a conference room with 15 men and me and maybe 2 other women, and it was aggressive and sometimes scary because they didn't have any problem yelling and screaming and fighting through issues where I just wanted to build some collaboration. So it took a while for me to really get out of my comfort zone. So I wish, and I said this earlier, I wish I had either pushed myself or had someone that pushed me out of my comfort zone faster. It took me a long time, and honestly, going out and hiring a coach to work with me to acknowledge my own power, to recognize what I was even good at. I was so what I thought I was good at was essentially doing what I was told to do, following my job description, delivering on what I was asked to do. But I had so much more to offer and didn't even realize it. So once I got comfortable with volunteering to take on projects that I didn't really have the expertise to do, I finally learned that success wasn't about knowing all the answers. It was about just finding ways to get things done.
Yes.
And as I've moved forward in my career and moved up into executive level roles, that's really the key. You don't have to be the expert in everything. You sometimes don't have to be the expert in anything. You just have to be the person that's most tenacious, that will find the way to get something done.
That's 100% right, and I know that you've got a lot to do, and you're trying to get things done, and I'm cautious of your time. So last question for you, Melissa, and maybe it's related to that insight that you just gave. You've had the chance to work with lots of great revenue leaders. What's something that you picked up along the way, or a piece of advice that you take with you that just informs your leadership style and your approach to running your team and helping everybody be successful?
Sure. So when I first moved into my role in UnitedHealth Group from working on the Optum side of the business, I went to work for the Chief Growth Officer, who happened to be a woman. It was a weird kind of transition because we were at the sales conference, and I transitioned from my previous job into my new job while we were at the sales conference. And she invited me to attend kind of a cocktail party with her, with all the executive leaders of the business I was moving into. And she took me by the hand, and we went around, and she introduced me to every single leader in that room. And not just, hi, this is Melissa. It was, hi, this is Melissa. Here's what she's going to be doing. Here's how she's going to reach out to you, and then explaining to me what they did She made such strong connections for me. And as I look back on that and look forward in my career, that is what a true chief revenue officer does. They build connections. They build relationships, whether it's inside an organization or outside an organization with people you want to do business with. They take you by the hand, and they build relationships that help make you more successful.
That is fantastic advice, and I think that really goes back to the point that you raised at the top about really the notion of a leadership shadow and what you permit and what you promote, and being able to lead by example and really introduce you and connect to you and empower you to go do great work, I think is critical. And I also loved your advice in terms of the face to candidates, as well as having diversity in both the candidate pool and the interview pool. The second thing you talked about in terms of providing and pushing women with more opportunities to do more, and really having multiple career paths. All of that is just dynamite advice, and I think it gets to the heart of what you just landed on, Melissa, about what is the role of a chief revenue officer, and it is connection, and it is relationship, and it is empowerment. So thank you so much for joining us today. I greatly appreciate your time and your feedback. And I thank everybody else for listening. And again, if you like the show, if you want to find out more about UnitedHealth Group, you can certainly find them online. And I'm sure you can find Melissa on LinkedIn. And if you like the show, we'd love to have your comments and your positive reviews on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. So with that, Melissa, I will let you get back to the business of leading. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Patrick. It was a pleasure.
Take care.
You've been listening to another episode of Revenue Optimization Radio with your host, Patrick Morrissey from Altify, right here on the Funnel Radio Network for at-work listeners like you.